The arrival. The car's headlights cut through the fog like blades, their beams swallowed almost instantly by the thick gray curtain that rolled over the road. Emily tightened her grip on the steering wheel, knuckles pale, her throat dry. She couldn't shake the feeling that the mist wasn't natural, that it crept deliberately, smothering the fields, muffling the night, hiding things she had no wish to see. Her phone buzzed once on the passenger seat, but the screen was blank. Dead. She hadn't touched it for the past hour. The signal had vanished long before she left the highway. She swallowed the knot in her throat, whispering to herself the way she always did when her nerves peaked. It's just fog. Just weather. Nothing more. But the words didn't hold. She was on her way to Hollowhurst, an estate her uncle had left her in his will. The letter had arrived 2 months ago, thick parchment with ink that bled slightly at the edges. The house is yours, Emily. It's time you knew the truth of our family. Truth. The word had hooked into her, dragging her out of her life in the city. She'd been teaching part-time art classes, drifting between studio jobs, half satisfied, half restless. The inheritance was unexpected, yet something about it called to her. A chance to start over. A chance to belong somewhere. But now, crawling up the dirt road with the house waiting beyond the fog, belonging felt like a punishment. When the gates emerged, she almost drove past them. Rusted iron twisted into a pattern of skeletal branches, they loomed taller than the car, their hinges drooping with age. A heavy chain coiled across them and a padlock hung open, as if someone had left it unlocked just for her. She slowed, pulse quickening. Getting out of the car, the air hit her. Damp, earthy, metallic, like rain on rust and rot. She unhooked the chain, pushed the gate with her shoulder. It moaned in protest, the sound high and sharp enough to make her flinch. For a moment she swore the fog pulled tighter around her, as though displeased she had entered. The driveway stretched ahead, lined by crooked trees. Their branches clawed at the mist, bark peeling in strips like old scabs. The crunch of gravel beneath her tires echoed far louder than it should have, until she eased to a stop in front of the house. It rose out of the fog like a blackened tooth. 3 stories high, windows dark and blind, the roof sloped steeply as though hunched in grief. Bricks mottled with moss and time gave the structure the look of something abandoned for centuries. Emily cut the engine and sat still, every instinct urging her not to move. A single light flickered in an upstairs window. Her breath caught. She hadn't told anyone she was coming. The lawyer had mailed her the deed, no caretakers had been mentioned. Yet the warm orange glow pulsed once, twice, before vanishing into darkness. Emily forced herself out of the car, boots crunching against gravel. The cold mist hugged her legs, dampening her jeans, seeping through her sweater. She grabbed her duffel bag, locked the car out of habit, and whispered, "It's just a bulb. Just old wiring." But the silence that followed was too heavy, too expectant. Inside, the house greeted her with the smell of age. Dust, mildew, something faintly sweet and rancid beneath it all. Her phone's flashlight beam skittered across peeling wallpaper, broken picture frames, and a grand staircase looming in the center hall. Shadows seemed thicker than they should be, clinging stubbornly in corners, twitching when she moved. The silence was alive. Every creak of the floor under her weight sounded like a whisper. Somewhere deeper in the house, something dripped steadily, water or otherwise. Emily found the switch near the door and flipped it. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the chandelier above buzzed violently before 3 bulbs flared to life, casting a weak yellow light across the foyer. Her chest loosened. Electricity meant normalcy. Electricity meant safety. But as her eyes adjusted, she noticed the walls. Dozens of portraits hung crookedly along the staircase. All in heavy gilt frames, all coated with a thin film of grime. They were her relatives, she assumed, but the faces were pale, gaunt, eyes painted with such intensity they seemed almost wet, almost real. Each one watched her from its frame, pupils dilated, lips pressed thin. She turned away quickly. Nope. Not tonight. Dragging her bag up the stairs, she found the master bedroom at the end of the hall. It was larger than her apartment back in the city, high ceilings, 4-poster bed draped in moth-eaten curtains, a wardrobe that leaned forward like it might topple at any second. The mattress sagged but seemed clean enough. She dropped her bag and sat on the edge of the bed. The springs groaned like something shifting beneath her. Her stomach twisted. She hadn't eaten since the afternoon. She considered going back downstairs, maybe checking the kitchen. But the thought of wandering those dark halls alone made her throat dry again. Instead, she kicked off her boots, pulled a blanket across her lap, and tried to breathe. It was just a house. A strange, old, too big house. But hers. Hers. The first sound came at midnight. Emily woke to the thud of something falling in the hall. She sat up, heart hammering, straining to listen. The air was thick, pressing against her ears. Then came the scrape. Slow, deliberate. As if something heavy was being dragged across the floorboards outside her door. Her throat closed. She reached for her phone, forgetting it was dead, then froze as the scraping stopped. Silence swelled, ringing in her head. She slid out of bed, bare feet cold on the wood, and crept toward the door. The knob felt icy under her palm. She pressed her ear to the wood. Nothing. But when she opened it a crack, the hall was darker than before. Not shadowed, darker, as though the light itself had been drained away. At the far end of the corridor, one of the portraits had fallen from the wall. Its frame lay shattered, the painting propped against the floorboards. Even from here, Emily could see the face inside had changed. The pale man who had stared so intently earlier was gone. In his place, the canvas showed only a black smudge dripping like wet paint, as though the figure had walked out of the picture and into the house. The hair on her arms rose. She backed into her room, slammed the door, and locked it. She barely slept after that. Every creak, every gust of wind against the shutters, every sigh of the old house gnawed at her nerves. The image of that dripping black smear wouldn't leave her. By dawn, her eyes burned with exhaustion. And as pale sunlight cut through the fog, she swore she heard a whisper in the walls, faint and rasping, like breath against her ear. "Welcome home, Emily." The unveiling. Emily didn't leave her room until the pale gray light of morning bled through the curtains. She'd barely slept, snatches of shallow dozing punctuated by sudden jerks awake, certain someone had whispered her name again. By the time she finally forced herself up, her body felt like lead, her head buzzing. The house was quiet. Too quiet. She cracked the bedroom door, half expecting to see the black smear of the ruined portrait waiting for her. Instead, the hallway looked almost normal in the thin daylight. The frames still hung crooked, their painted faces pale and watchful, but the broken frame at the far end was gone. The smear of dripping blackness, gone too. Her mouth dried. "No," she whispered. "I saw it." Maybe she'd imagined it. Maybe exhaustion and nerves had twisted the shadows. Yet the hollow ache in her gut told her otherwise. Someone had moved that portrait. Someone had been here. She padded barefoot down the hall. The air smelled of old wood, faintly sour, with a metallic undercurrent that clung to her tongue. The floorboards were gritty beneath her toes, as if dust had collected for centuries. When she reached the place where the frame had shattered, she stopped. No shards, no canvas, nothing but faint scratches etched into the wood. Long, narrow grooves running parallel, like the marks of fingernails dragged in resistance. Her stomach tightened. The kitchen sat at the rear of the house, behind a swinging door with a cracked frosted window. It was bigger than she expected, its layout archaic but intact. Cast iron stove squatting like a beast in the corner, wooden counters scarred by knife marks, cupboards swollen with damp. A faint smell of mold seeped from the sink drain, earthy and foul. Emily rifled through cabinets, trying to distract herself with something practical. Most were bare. In one she found a stack of chipped plates and cups, their surfaces sticky with dust. In another, a tin of tea so old the paper label had curled away from the metal. When she opened the final drawer, she stopped. A leather-bound journal lay inside, spine cracked, its cover blotched with dark stains. It looked deliberate, placed there for someone to find. She lifted it out, brushing the film of dust with her sleeve. The first page was dated 1871. October 12th, "The walls breathe at night. My wife insists it is the settling of the wood, but I know better. I hear them in the silence, the sighs, the murmurs. Something dwells here that is not of God." Emily flipped through. Entries ran sporadically, stretching across decades. The handwriting varied, different generations each recording their time in the house. And in nearly every hand the same refrain appeared. The house is not empty. Her pulse quickened. Some entries spoke of shadows moving through halls, portraits whose eyes followed too closely, doors locking from the outside. Others hinted at disappearances, servants vanishing, a child who walked into the wall and never returned. She closed the book quickly, nausea rising. That whisper she'd heard. The smear in the portrait. She wasn't losing her mind. Later she walked the grounds. Fog still clung to the estate, though the sun burned faintly overhead, its light diluted to silver. The trees leaned inward, their branches tangled like claws, the air still with a watchfulness that prickled her skin. Behind the house she found a crumbling stone well, its rim cracked and slick with moss. Peering down she saw only darkness. Her breath echoed faintly off unseen walls, carried away into endless depth. A faint odor wafted upward, damp earth, rust, something sour. She pulled back sharply. Near the treeline, half buried in weeds, stood a row of headstones. She knelt, brushing mud away from the first. The name had almost vanished beneath weather and time, but she made out the word, Holloway. Her family name. Each stone bore it. The Holloways had been here for generations, buried in their own backyard. But the dates, she frowned. Several overlapped. 2 brothers both dead the same year. A woman and her infant son, both gone in 1903. And the final stone, cleaner than the rest, bore the date only 2 years ago. Arthur Holloway. Her uncle. The one who had left her this place. Emily pressed her lips together. He had never spoken of Hollowhurst. She barely knew him. But now he lay in this earth, tied forever to the house. Her stomach twisted. "Why me?" she whispered. The fog didn't answer. That night the house stirred again. Emily sat at the writing desk in the master bedroom, the journal open beside her, trying to make sense of the fractured entries. She'd marked certain lines with a pencil, phrases that clawed at her. They come through the mirrors. The portraits are their windows. Never go below the cellar after dark. As the fire in the small hearth dwindled, she caught movement in the corner of her eye. The wardrobe. Its door stood ajar. She didn't remember leaving it that way. She froze, breath snagging, eyes locked on the thin slice of blackness between the wooden frame. The dark inside wasn't empty. It felt thick, pulsing like ink swirling in water. Slowly she rose. It's just shadows. Just a trick. She nudged the wardrobe door with the tip of her finger. It creaked wider, revealing only coats and empty hangers. Dust swirled. She laughed once, shakily, then shut it. When she turned back toward the desk, the fire flared. A gust of air roared through the chimney, rattling the flue, and for 1 second flames leapt high, casting violent light across the walls. In that flash, every portrait lining the bedroom seemed to lean forward, their painted eyes gleaming wet, their mouths stretched in expressions not painted by any brush. Emily stumbled back against the bedpost, bile rising in her throat. The fire snapped back to normal. The portraits hung still, dull, lifeless. Her heart battered her ribs. She clutched the journal, whispering to herself, "You're not crazy. You're not crazy." But when she dared look again, one portrait was missing from the wall. The hook hung empty, swinging faintly as if someone had only just taken it. Sleep evaded her. She lay awake until dawn, listening to the house shift and sigh around her, every creak a footstep, every gust a whisper. When the pale light came again, she rose with trembling hands and returned to the kitchen. She needed answers. The journal wasn't enough. She searched the cupboards, the drawers, the shelves above the stove. Dust showered her hair, cobwebs clung to her wrists. At last, behind a false panel beneath the counter, her fingers brushed something hollow. She pried it open. Inside lay a bundle of papers, bound with twine. Letters, deeds, yellowed news clippings. The first was a letter, written in spidery hand. "To any Holloway who finds this, know the truth. The house was never ours. We are only its keepers. It feeds on us, binds us. Each generation must give or all will be taken. I failed my part. My son is gone because of me." Emily's breath hitched. She shuffled through the rest. Newspaper reports of strange disappearances in the area. Police notes of Holloway children lost in accidents. Scribbled notes in margins. The house takes what it wants. It does not forget. Her chest tightened. The kitchen air felt heavier, pressing down as though the walls listened. She shoved the bundle back into the hole, replaced the panel, and staggered into the hall. And there, waiting at the end of the corridor, stood a figure. Tall and thin, his face obscured by shadow but familiar in posture, the same shape as the missing person. Emily froze, unable to breathe. The figure raised one hand. Not a wave. Not a greeting. A pointing finger aimed directly at her. The hall light flickered once, twice, then died. The descent. The darkness that swallowed the hall pressed in on Emily like a living thing. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The shape at the end of the corridor had dissolved into the black, but she still felt its gaze on her, as sharp and cold as a blade against her throat. She fumbled backward, palms scraping the wall, until her fingers found the bedroom doorframe. She ducked inside, slammed the door, and shoved the dresser against it with every ounce of strength in her arms. The wood shrieked across the floor, the vibration jolting her bones. For a moment there was only silence. Then came the knock. Not at the door. From inside the wardrobe. Emily froze. A soft, deliberate rap against the wood, followed by another. 3 knocks, evenly spaced. Her chest heaved. She stumbled to the fireplace, grabbed the iron poker, and held it clumsily in both hands. Her legs shook so hard she nearly fell. The wardrobe door creaked. Just a hair. The black seam widened, spilling a darkness thicker than the room's shadows. Something shifted inside, a faint scrape like bare feet on wood. "No," Emily whispered, voice cracking. "No, no, no." She raised the poker. And the knocking stopped. The wardrobe door shut with a soft click, as if a hand from the other side had gently closed it. Emily collapsed to her knees, the poker clattering beside her. Tears blurred her vision. She stayed like that until exhaustion dragged her down, curling on the floor like a child, shivering, waiting for dawn. When she finally emerged, gray daylight bleeding through the windows, she didn't feel relief. The house was lighter but not safer. The air hung heavy, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. She needed help. Her car still sat in the driveway, fog curling around its tires. But when she slid into the driver's seat and turned the key, the engine coughed once and died. She tried again. Her phone remained blank, the screen cracked with a hairline fracture she didn't remember. Emily let her head fall against the steering wheel, breath shallow. "Please, just let me go." But the house loomed behind her, silent, patient. That afternoon she walked into the nearby village. It was farther than she thought, nearly 2 miles down the gravel road, her boots biting into her heels, fog clinging to her skin like cobwebs. By the time she stumbled into the small cluster of shops and cottages, she was raw with fatigue. The locals stared. Not in welcome. Not in curiosity. Recognition. An old woman outside the bakery spat on the ground when she passed. A man unloading crates from a truck muttered something under his breath. She caught the word Holloway. Inside the general store, the air smelled of wood polish and coffee. A bell chimed over the door. Behind the counter, a balding man with wire-rimmed glasses glanced up. His smile faltered the moment he saw her. "You're from the house?" he said flatly. Emily swallowed. I inherited it. My uncle." He held up a hand. "You shouldn't be there." His voice was quiet, almost pitying. Emily's skin prickled. "Why not?" The man shook his head. "Some places don't let go. That house, it's not meant for living. Not anymore." "Do you know what happened there?" she pressed. His jaw worked. "People vanish. Always have. Sometimes children. Sometimes whole families. The Holloways stayed longest, but even they..." He trailed off. Emily leaned forward. "Even they what?" The man's eyes darted to the window, then back. "You need to leave. Don't go digging. Don't stay after dark." Her stomach sank. "My car's dead. My phone too." His lips pressed thin. He bent beneath the counter, set down a kerosene lantern and a box of matches. "Take these. Don't rely on the power. When it goes for good." Emily took them with trembling hands. "Please. Just tell me what's in that house. The man's gaze locked on hers. It's not what's in it, he said softly. It's what it is. She returned to Hollowhurst just as dusk bled across the sky. The fog had thickened again, curling low over the ground. Her skin crawled with every step up the drive. Inside, the house seemed to breathe. The air shifted in drafts that didn't belong, carrying faint whispers that skated across her skin. The portraits on the stairs leaned ever so slightly, as though straining to hear her footsteps. Emily lit the lantern. Its warm glow steadied her nerves, though shadows bent unnaturally against the walls. She gripped the journal, flipping pages with frantic fingers. Never go below the cellar after dark. Her eyes caught on that line again. But what was the cellar? She hadn't found a door leading down. She searched the kitchen, the pantry, the dining room. Her lantern beam caught dust motes, spiderwebs, and old stains on the floorboards that might have been rust. At last, in the pantry, behind a shelving unit stacked with rotted jars, she found it. A narrow door, half hidden, locked with a rusted latch. The air around it felt colder. Her hands shook as she slid the bolt free. The hinges screamed when she tugged it open, revealing stone steps spiraling into blackness. A damp, sour smell rushed upward, earth, mold, and something sharper like iron. Lantern held high, Emily descended. The walls sweated with moisture, slime slick beneath her fingertips. Each step creaked, the sound swallowed quickly by the thick dark. The deeper she went, the heavier the air grew, pressing into her chest until every breath hurt. At the bottom, the lantern revealed a wide chamber. Stone walls, dirt floor, chains bolted into the rock, and carvings. Symbols gouged deep, circling the room. Spirals, jagged crosses, shapes that hurt to look at. Some glistened wet as though freshly cut. Emily's heart thundered. She stumbled closer. In the center of the room lay a circle of ash. Inside it, bones. Small, fragile, children's bones. Her stomach lurched. She fell to her knees, gagging. The lantern flickered violently, shadows jerking across the walls. And then she heard it. A breath. Not hers. Long and slow, rising from the far corner of the cellar. Emily lifted the lantern. Something crouched there. Thin. Pale. Limbs too long, folded wrong like a spider. Its head tilted slowly, eyes gleaming with a wet, unnatural shine. The lantern flame flared and died. Darkness swallowed her. She didn't remember running back up the stairs, but suddenly she was in the kitchen, slamming the door, bolting it, gasping as if she'd surfaced from drowning. The lantern was still in her hand, its glass scorched black. 4 hours she sat against the wall, rocking, clutching the poker again. The memory of those eyes wouldn't leave her, the way they had reflected her lantern, too wide, too human, and yet not human at all. The journal slipped from her lap, pages fanning open. Her gaze caught on one line, scrawled in frantic, uneven hand. The house is hungry. It always was. And it will not stop until it has taken us all. Emily pressed her palms to her face and wept. Somewhere above her, footsteps moved across the floorboards. Slow, heavy, measured. And she knew, with bone-deep certainty, she was no longer the only living thing in Hollowhurst. Darkness swallowed everything. The revelation. Emily barely slept. Every time her eyes fluttered shut, she felt those eyes from the cellar burning in the dark, felt the rasp of unseen breath against her skin. The house whispered constantly now, threads of voices carried through vents, behind walls, beneath floorboards. She couldn't tell if they were in her head or in the air. By morning, her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror startled her. Skin pale, eyes bloodshot, lips cracked. But worse than her exhaustion was the sense that something behind the glass stared back. Her own reflection's eyes seemed just a fraction delayed, the blink coming half a second too late. She smashed the mirror with her fist. Glass rained into the sink, her knuckles bloodied, but relief flooded her chest. One less window. One less way for them to look through. She spent the day scouring the house for answers. The journal wasn't enough. She needed the full truth. In the attic, beneath moth-eaten trunks, she found another chest. Its lock had long since rusted away. Inside lay a bundle of parchment scrolls tied with black ribbon. She unrolled one with trembling hands. To bind the hunger, one must give it flesh of their own. The script was old, written in ink that had browned with time. Diagrams covered the page, circles, runes, instructions she couldn't fully decipher. But the words were clear. One must bleed so the house does not take all. Her heart pounded. Her family hadn't been cursed by chance. They had fed it, sustained it, sacrificed their own children to keep it satisfied. The bones in the cellar. The graves outside. She reeled back, bile in her throat. No, she whispered. No, no, no. But deep down she knew it was true. That was why the Holloways had survived generations while others vanished. Why her uncle's last words had been, "It's time you knew the truth of our family." Because now it was her turn. That night the house came alive. The lantern's light burned low, and the electricity had died entirely. Emily sat in the foyer clutching the poker when the whispers began, clearer than before, voices overlapping, pressing against her skull. "Join us. We fed it. You must too. Blood keeps the walls standing." The portraits trembled on the walls, their eyes glistening. One by one they turned their faces away from her, until every painted figure stared toward the grand doors. Emily followed their gaze. The front doors slowly swung open. Fog poured inside, thick and deliberate, spilling across the floor like smoke. And in its depths shapes moved. Figures pale and indistinct, their limbs jerking unnaturally as though pulled by strings. The Holloways. Her ancestors. They stepped into the foyer, faces blurred, mouths whispering in unison. Blood for the house. Always blood for the house. Emily screamed and staggered back, poker raised. "Stay away from me." The figures advanced, their steps soundless. Her uncle's face emerged from the fog, sharper than the rest. His mouth opened, and for the first time the words came in his voice, not the chorus. "You must finish what I could not, or it will take you whole." Tears blurred Emily's vision. "No, I won't." The portraits rattled violently on their hooks, the house shuddering as if in rage. The chandelier above crashed to the ground, shattering into glittering shards. Emily bolted up the stairs, the whispers chasing her, filling every corridor until she couldn't tell if the voices were behind her or inside her head. She locked herself in the study. Papers still littered the desk from her uncle's time, deeds, maps, scraps of writing. She ransacked them, hands shaking. One letter caught her eye, folded neatly inside a book. The handwriting was hurried, almost frantic. "Emily, if you are reading this, I failed. The house demanded a child and I could not give it one. So it took me instead. It will not rest. It will come for you as it came for me. Unless you make the sacrifice it craves. There is no escape, not while you bear our name. You cannot run. You cannot hide. You can only feed it or be devoured." The page slipped from her fingers. Her vision blurred with panic. The sacrifice. Her uncle had died because he refused. But she had no children. No one else to give. Which meant the house would take her. The floor trembled beneath her. Books slid from shelves, papers scattered. The air grew dense, almost liquid, clinging to her throat, suffocating. And then the door to the study burst open. Not from outside. From inside the wall. A panel splintered, revealing a hidden passage. Cold air gushed out, carrying the faint smell of rot. Emily staggered back as a figure crawled through. Not mist. Not portrait. Flesh. Its limbs were too long, its head cocked at a sharp angle, eyes bulging white and wet. Its mouth stretched open, lips split, jaw too wide, and a guttural hiss rattled from its throat. The thing from the cellar. It dragged itself into the room, nails clawing deep grooves into the floor. Emily screamed, snatched the lantern and hurled it. Flames burst across the floorboards, licking at the creature's legs. It shrieked, a sound like metal tearing, and recoiled into the shadows. The fire spread, smoke choking the air. Emily staggered through the doorway, coughing, stumbling down the hall. The portraits wailed now, their painted mouths open in soundless screams. The walls pulsed, veins of black spreading like rot through plaster. The entire house shook with fury. She burst into the foyer. The front doors slammed shut in her face. The staircase buckled, beams groaning, plaster raining from the ceiling. She was trapped. In the corner of the foyer, The journal lay open on the floor, pages fluttering in the wind from broken windows. She dropped to her knees, scanning frantically. Her eyes caught on the final entry, one she hadn't seen before. There is one way. Blood of the house itself. Break the heart and you may break free. But it lies deep where no Holloway dares tread. The cellar. The creature. The heart of the house. Emily's chest heaved. She closed her eyes, tears streaking her face. It was suicide. But staying here was worse. She rose, gripped the poker, and turned toward the kitchen. The house seemed to know. The walls groaned in protest, the voices rose to a howl. The portraits shattered in unison, raining glass and canvas across the floor. But Emily kept walking. Step after step, back to the pantry. Back to the hidden door. Back into the waiting dark. The house was no longer a house. It had shed its disguise of rotting wood and faded Victorian charm, revealing something far older, far hungrier. Emily stood in the center of the great hall, her chest heaving, sweat and dust clinging to her face, staring into a space that shifted and writhed as though the walls themselves were made of flesh. The air was thicker here, oppressive with a metallic tang, as if she had stepped inside a living organ. Every sound seemed amplified, the frantic beat of her own heart, the guttural creak of timbers warping, the soft, terrible whispering that poured from every corner like breath against her neck. She tightened her grip on the iron poker she had snatched from the fireplace, though deep inside she knew such a primitive weapon was laughable against whatever the hollow house had become. Still, clutching it gave her the illusion of control, and right now that illusion was all that kept her standing. Above her, the chandelier swayed wildly though no wind stirred, its broken crystals clattering like teeth. Portraits of the house's ancestors, the Hollow family, no longer hung passively. Their eyes moved, following her, their painted mouths warping into sneers, whispers leaking from cracked frames. She comes, she comes, she comes. The voices hissed, overlapping, a cacophony of eager anticipation. And then the floor beneath Emily's boots rippled like disturbed water, and from the ripples rose hands, pale, skeletal, covered in flaking skin, grasping at her ankles. She yanked free with a strangled cry, stumbling backward, colliding with the wall. But the wallpaper was no longer wallpaper. Its floral patterns had stretched into shrieking faces, mouths wide as they vomited black tar that slithered across the floor toward her. She bolted, driven by instinct, the hall distorting as though trying to slow her escape. Doorways elongated, staircases twisted in impossible geometries, but Emily forced herself forward, down into the bowels of the house, where the whispers seemed to beckon her. Her lungs burned, every breath fouled by dust and rot. She stumbled onto the staircase leading to the cellar, nearly falling as the banister pulsed beneath her hand like a vein. The door at the bottom opened for her, as though welcoming her, revealing a glow that was not firelight but something far stranger, a cold luminescence that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a beating heart. The cellar was no cellar anymore. Its stone walls had melted away, replaced by a cavernous chamber that pulsed with organic wetness, slick as muscle. Chains hung from the ceiling, swaying gently as though touched by invisible hands. At the center stood the altar she had glimpsed before, though now it was alive, its surface heaving like lungs, veins crawling across its blackened stone. And above it, rising out of shadow, was the figure. It was enormous, towering, its form constantly shifting. Sometimes a man in funeral garb, sometimes a woman in mourning black, sometimes a child with hollow eyes. But most often it was simply a void, a human shape with no face, only a swirling, endless emptiness. Its voice was not a voice but the sound of hundreds speaking at once, a choir of broken throats. "You are chosen, Emily," it murmured, the sound vibrating through her bones. "Blood binds you to us. You are the key. The last heir." Emily staggered backward, nearly slipping on the slick floor. "No," she rasped, shaking her head violently, clutching the poker so tightly her knuckles split and bled. "I don't belong to you. I'm not part of this." "You carry our mark," the voice thundered, and suddenly Emily felt her chest burn. She looked down and screamed. The skin over her sternum writhed, letters carving themselves into her flesh, glowing with sickly light. The hollow name etched itself into her as if branded from within, She fell to her knees, clawing at her skin, but the letters only deepened, becoming scars that pulsed with every heartbeat. The figure leaned closer, its void face inches from hers. You will finish what they began. You will keep us fed. The house will live through you. No. Emily screamed again, this time not just in terror but in rage. She forced herself to her feet, vision blurring with tears and pain, and swung the iron poker with every ounce of strength she had. It collided with the altar, sparks erupting where iron met stone flesh. A shriek tore through the chamber, so loud it rattled her teeth. The walls quivered, chains snapped loose, and the figure recoiled, its form unraveling into dozens of wailing silhouettes. Emily struck again and again, screaming with each blow, until cracks spread across the altar like spiderwebs. The glow within dimmed, faltered. The whispers became shrieks of anger, of hunger denied. But before she could deliver the final blow, the altar split open like a rib cage, and from within surged black tendrils, lashing around her arms and throat, hoisting her into the air. The poker fell from her grasp, clattering uselessly. She choked, clawing at the tendrils as the figure reformed, towering above her. You cannot destroy us, it thundered. We are your blood, your history. To end us is to end yourself. And deep inside, beneath the terror, Emily knew it was true. She could feel the bond now, the ancestral curse threaded through her veins, tying her to the hollow house. If it died, so would she. The house was her inheritance, her prison, her reflection. Her vision darkened as the tendrils squeezed tighter. But in that darkness she saw something, the memory of her grandmother's face, stern and sorrowful, whispering warnings that Emily had never understood until now. We are bound, child. But every chain has a weakness. Emily forced herself to inhale against the crushing weight. She reached inward, past the fear, past the pain, toward the glowing scar on her chest. And she realized, the mark was not just a curse. It was also a link, a tether. If she could not destroy the house without destroying herself, then perhaps she could do the opposite. Perhaps she could take it with her. Summoning the last reserves of her will, she grabbed the tendrils at her throat, not to tear them away but to pull them closer. She pressed her bleeding palm against the scar, smearing the blood into the glowing letters. If you want me, she gasped, her voice raw, then you'll have to take all of me. And then she screamed, not in fear this time but in defiance. The scar flared, blinding white, the light pouring from her chest like a sun tearing itself free. The tendrils ignited, burning away into ash. The figure howled, its void face cracking, splitting, unraveling. The altar collapsed inward, sucked into the vortex of Emily's glowing mark. The walls convulsed, the chains snapped like brittle bones, and the house itself roared as though in mortal agony. Emily felt herself tearing apart, every nerve lit with fire. The house was dying and it was dragging her with it. But in her final moments of clarity, as the light consumed her, she saw the faces of those trapped souls. The ancestors, the children, the women and men who had been devoured by this curse. Their faces lifted, freed, as though released from centuries of torment. They looked at her with gratitude, their whispers soft now, no longer commands but blessings. Thank you. The last thing Emily heard was the hollow house collapsing around her, its scream echoing into silence. When the villagers came the next morning, they found nothing but a smoking crater where the mansion had stood.